This is going to be such a great interview today because Sean and I just met. And that makes it kind of exciting for me because I'm going to find out new things and we're going to make new connections, and everybody listening is going to as well. So, Sean, welcome to The Secret Art of Business. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you, Catherine. It is awesome to be here. I love podcasts. I love meeting new people and making those connections, and excited to spend some time with you and have this conversation.
Now, you have a podcast too, and I don't want to get jump too much ahead because I want you to tell kind of your own story as far as what is it that you do?
So, my wife and I started an executive coaching and leadership development firm about 13 years ago. It was a side gig because that's a great way to work in today's culture, right?
Yes.
You have your day gig that kind of pays the bills, and start that side gig that's that passion play. And so we started as a side gig 13 years ago. 8 years ago, we flipped the switch and went full time in the company. And so 8 years ago, it was my wife and I. She's brilliant in marketing and strategy. So she was working a lot on the business, and I was working in the business as the coach and leadership development. And to fast forward quickly through 8 years, 8 years later now, we are 6 employees and 16 other coaches as contractors around the country, making an impact. And, our whole thing with this, because I know you'll tap into the creative side of life, we had a goal, two primary goals with this, and it actually was not even financial. It wasn't even about life. It was the fact that we are firm believers in coaching, that when people have someone for that one-on-one relationship to really dive into them. And even though we do executive coaching, which is about business and leadership, it's about the who. So like if I was coaching Catherine, it wouldn't be to make you the best leader for your company. It would be to make you the best leader you're created to be. Your company gets the benefit of it. And so it's always about that
Oh my
person.
gosh, I love
So
that.
we are firm believers in coaching, and we knew from day one that most coaches, 80% of coaches, don't make it on their own, just because it's hard to have your own small
Interesting.
business. It's hard to generate business. And so we wanted to use coaches as contract coaches, subcontractors, where we could get enough business, sub out to them so they'd be able to have some extra revenue, be able to make it on their own, which is a huge blessing for us. The second goal of it was we felt that God was going to supply for our needs through the business so that we could give back in a big way.
Mm.
So we made a decision from day one to gift 33% of the profits every year to nonprofits around faith, leadership, and education. And we've been doing that, and it's a blast for my wife because every December she is Santa Claus. We hear, kind of like where our
Oh
profit's going to come
yeah.
out for the year. We take the 33% of it, and then she goes after those orgs. And so it's just fun to have a business that, number one, is impacting hundreds and hundreds of leaders every year, but more than that, just impacting the lives of coaches and impacting the lives of nonprofits in the process.
I love that so much for a couple of things that you said. One, you're working with your spouse
Hmm.
because not
Yeah,
everybody can, and you are doing it very successfully. But you also kind of just brush across that you both have different goals. One's working on the business, one's working in the business, which I think is really key. If everybody knows their role, especially at the leadership level, nobody's going to step on each other's toes. It's like, no, this is my space, this is your space. We can collaborate, but we know what our strengths are. So I think that is really important. Um, but I also love too that you just kind of stumbled into this. So what was it that made you decide, you know what, we're going to be coaches and we're going to go all in on this? I mean,
yeah,
what
that's
did
a
you, how
great
did you find
story.
that
Yeah.
this was your zone of genius, if you will?
Yeah, so a interesting route to that. My first 17 years of my professional life, I was a preacher. Actually, I was fourth generation in ministry, and so I knew ministry all through. And
Oh,
here's the
wow. I
thing:
didn't realize it went that far back.
yeah, everybody in my family expected me to do that. And I
Of
was the
course.
ultimate people pleaser. And so as a people pleaser, I was like, okay, that's what I need
Mm,
to do. And so went into it, and it was great. But in my time in ministry, there are a lot of great things, there are a lot of difficult things, but my greatest passion was teaching, i.e., preaching, and developing leaders.
yep.
And so it was just a huge thing for us. And then when I turned 40, it wasn't a midlife crisis thing. We were just at this kind of precipice in our life of making a change. We had a friend, and this is where people who know us can play such a huge part in our life. We felt just because of some circumstances that had taken place, it was time to transition out of ministry. Honestly, I'd made some different mistakes, and I was just at this place where I felt like God was like, "Hey, let's get some things straight first But we had a friend who had been at our church for a long time and left because they moved, who was working at Indiana University at the Keller School of Business. And when we were getting out of ministry, he reached out and was
Right.
like, "Hey, you need to come down and talk to us about this." And I was literally like, "Where are you working? What are you doing? What are you talking about?" Well, they flew me down for an interview. I interviewed like half the day, flew back to Baltimore, Maryland, where I lived at that point. And by the time I landed, I had a contract in my inbox. And so it was this crazy transition of going there. And here's the fun part about this. When I started day one of my job, I asked my boss, it wasn't my friend was the CFO. I asked the CEO a great question that I don't recommend you asking. But on day one, I said, "Why did you hire me? Why did you hire me?"
Oh, wow.
And here was his answer. He said, "What you don't know about business, we can teach you." They give me an incredible mentor to help on the business side. They said, "What you know and understand about people, no one could teach because it's all about people." And so we made that
It
transition.
is.
So now all of a sudden I'm doing executive education in a top 10 public business school in the country. And we were doing coaching through those programs. And I talked to my boss in that first year and I'm like, "Hey, this executive coaching stuff, I'd like to go get trained in it, do some of that, help out with the faculty in that." And they sent me to get trained for it. And so we actually started our business really just to process money doing contract work. And it went from there. And so when I look back now that I've been 14 years in this line of work after 17 years of ministry, I'm doing exactly the same thing, just in a totally different
Yep.
context.
I can
Totally different
absolutely see the
context.
parallel. And if anything, if I think it's great to listen to God or the fates or just whatever is going on in your gut, that sometimes the answer is yes, and yes, I'm doing the right thing, but I could do more. And that's exactly what you're doing. And I love that the fact that you have this connection with people, you're just basically kind of taking it in a different direction, if or to the next level.
Yeah.
Because your faith is only one part of you, but if what if you could couple that with business in your life too? I mean, that is huge. That is huge.
It is, and we loop it in with everything. And I know you love the whole creative side of the brain and things like that. And over the
I
last
do.
8 years, I mean, it is constant change. And I'm a firm believer in the whole concept of pivot or perish. And we
Yes,
talk about
yes.
working on the business versus in the business. 5 years ago, I would be coaching 25 people at a time, doing other things. Today, I coach 5 or 6 people because we've grown so much. I actually have to be the CEO now and keep looking at what's coming. And I love
Right,
that.
right.
I love the variety of it and the fact that every day is something new and different.
And I love that you said that because that's exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to creativity. A lot of people will say to me, "Oh, I can't be on the podcast because I'm not creative." We all are. We all have two halves of our brain, and it's just a matter of how much you, or how, I guess, in general, how you utilize it. And if you're an entrepreneur, you're doing that. You're doing exactly that. Um, Now, we can probably kind of guess in some ways how you got to this, because my next question is always, what did you do as a kid for fun? So when you got out of bed in the morning, let's say 8-year-old Sean, feet
Mhm.
hit the floor, what were some of the things that you just really, really loved to do?
For me, it was all about sports, getting outside,
Nice.
getting with my friends, playing the sports, having fun. Um, but it's interesting, when you look back on life, that was my passion. And so I was outside all the time,
Hmm.
playing games all the time. We'd always organize things. Um, but I also found myself, I didn't realize it then. Again, when you look back, I was the one that was always organizing it. Hey, let's play this today and let's set up these teams and
Right,
let's
right.
do this. And so that whole side of leadership, and people always ask that question, is
Yes.
leadership nature or nurture? And I'm like, yes. I think it's more nurture than nature. I think that you do develop those skills, and I firmly believe every single person can develop incredible leadership skills because leadership is influence, influence is behavior. Are you behaving like a leader? So it all can happen
And I'm
there.
guessing you had a lot of great examples growing up of leaders too.
Absolutely. Yeah, because we were in church all the time, we were in other things, and even going through school, I got into student government and things like that. And uh, it was always about just trying to step up, but it wasn't about a power play. It wasn't about like, I want to be up front. It was more about just bringing people together and trying to impact people. But for me, yeah, it was sports. It was having fun. That's still a part of my life today. But I also loved being at places where I could just listen and learn. I'm a lifetime learner. I'm always taking in, probably sometimes too much, because it's really easy to listen to podcasts today and to watch videos and to read books where it kind of like shifts you every single way in the wind. You can't do that. You've got to have a focus. But I still love to learn. And so, it's funny you talk about the childhood piece though, and those fun pieces. If there's one thing I could change about my childhood, I took everything too
Hmm.
seriously. I didn't just chill and enjoy. And I think
Yeah.
as adults today, we're all in that trap of just taking things too seriously, going after what's next instead of
Right.
enjoying the journey to what's next.
Yeah, and being in the moment, I struggle with that a lot too. And I was a very serious child, just very driven for, I don't know what I was so driven at a young age, but I was. That's always just kind of stuck with me. Um, and I don't know if it's because if you like fall into this servant leader sort of mentality. You want to you make sure everybody is you're not trying to get yourself in the right place, but everybody else along the way too. I feel like I'm sometimes kind of cursed with seeing the potential in people that they don't see in themselves, and I work very hard to help other people
Yep.
fill that role too. It's like you don't see this in yourself. You're so amazing, and just getting them the right connections and things like that. So yeah,
Yep.
we're probably kind of cut very similarly from the same cloth, just in that regard. So I totally get
Yeah.
that.
It's interesting
But
you bring that up because one of the things as a kid is I heard that from people all the time, right? Hey, you can do so many great
oh, interesting.
things and all this stuff. And so this is going to sound crazy, but there was so much praise and aspiration from people. I became a people pleaser and become what people
Yeah.
needed me to become instead of trying to figure out who I really was. And this was like going through a lot of life and even going into ministry. I think God blessed it. I think it was the right thing. I learned a ton in it, but I did it because it's what everybody
Oh my gosh.
expected me
Yeah.
to do. And this flip in my career at the
Mm-hmm.
age of 40, in part, ironically, was me for the first time saying, what do I want to do? And today it's still about
Love it.
people and stuff, but it's different where I say that I'm a recovering people pleaser, not recovered, but a recovering people pleaser. And so there's a ton of people that are listening right now that are in that same boat. They're always listening to what other people say about them and what they think they should be. Listen to other people because they do help you tap into brilliance, right? So, like my friend Sam that brought me to IU, he saw that. Had I not listened to him, I wouldn't even be on this path I'm on today. So, we need to listen to people to see what they say, but we also need to listen to ourselves and take that introspective approach to say, who am I and what do I think I want to accomplish at the same time?
Do you find that a lot of executives have that same problem, if you will, that same issue where they are people pleasers and they think less about what they want?
Great question. I'd say it's 50-50. There are a lot of them in that boat. There
Okay.
definitely are. Um, the ones in the other boat, it is they aspired for it because they wanted power, prestige, and position.
Oh, interesting.
And no matter which boat you're in, you can be effective and or ineffective if you don't find the balance in life with it. If you're a people pleaser and
Nice.
that's all you're thinking about, you're not probably telling people the truth that they need to hear to grow and get better. If you're in it for power,
Right.
prestige, and position, you're not elevating people, you're stepping on people. And so both
Mm-hmm.
sides need to learn what it is. And that's why we have a company. That's why we have a business, right? Of helping them become that
Right.
holistic leader to understand what leadership really is and the behaviors. And a phrase that I use, and we put this out, and my team, they like it, but it's like, it's a harsh phrase, but it comes from a great heart. If you don't truly care for your people, don't lead. Because if you don't truly care for them, you're not going to be a
Oh,
leader.
that's
You're
actually a
just going
very
to hold your
powerful
thumb down.
statement.
Yeah, yeah. But there's truth to it.
Yeah.
You got to care about people because it's leadership's about them. It's not about you, Catherine.
Right. Right. I love it. I love it. That's a very powerful statement. And I think also between that sort of knowledge that you've gained actually, being that sports leader and the ministry, that has just all added up to the success you have today, because I could definitely see all the skills that you've learned along the way is what makes your business very powerful with the people that you serve. So I think that is a great, and also very different than what I've had before, a great path for people to really kind of see
Yeah.
that, I have all these skills and here's how I want to apply it in a really effective way.
But I love what you just said. Um, I actually coach this a lot with people, and I want your listeners to think back. And I like the approach to your podcast because this taps into it a little bit. Everything that you've experienced and been through parlays for what's next. There is no lost
Absolutely.
experience, even the horrible experiences of life, be it death, be it a
Yes.
firing, be it whatever the case is, right? God parlays all those experiences for what's next. So take the lessons from those things, the good things, the bad things. And so when you're talking about what was it in childhood and what is in this and has that creativity still flowing, I would challenge your listeners to think back, like, what are those linkages going through the years of
Mm-hmm.
my life that are setting me up for what's next? Because when we begin to
Yes.
find those linkages, we begin to find freedom. When you find freedom, you find peace.
Yes. 100%. I'm a very firm believer. I'm so glad you're on today, because
Yeah,
this is what I totally believe. Now,
absolutely.
you're doing awesome things, like I said, for people, which I love people that are game changers in people's lives too, being kind of like the catalyst for change for people. But when you need to step away, what are some of the things that you do to unplug and basically recalibrate yourself in order to keep going with this drive that you do have?
Yeah, that's morphed over the years too. It changes as you go through different stages of life,
Well,
like
you
when
you
I
do what you
was,
need at the time, so
yeah, exactly. Today it's funny because I need my time and I need my time with my family. See, it's my wife and we have a
love it.
daughter. She's 20 now, but she's still living at home and going to school and working. And we all love to cook together. We all love to play games together. We all like to watch sports together. And so there's a lot of that. Just being with them and being with other friends is a big piece. Um, my wife is huge on hospitality, so we love having people into our home. So
Oh,
for me,
love
it's
that.
literally taking the work hat off, being with my family, being with friends, just enjoying time. But then I've also realized too, especially as I've gotten older, is that I need time just to unplug personally. And so for me, oftentimes it's just going out on my back porch, reading a book. Like every other Friday or so, after a couple weeks, if I don't get a good break, I even tell my wife, told them last week, I'm like, hey, I need my 90 minutes on the porch. They know what that means. It's like, I'm going to go out there and be by myself. For me, it's typically a cigar, a beer, and a book. And it's just 90 minutes to unplug. And that book has to be a novel. And this is new to me in the last 5 years. I never used to read novels. But the reason I like that approach now is two purposes. Number one, it doesn't make me go into work mode because if I'm reading, anything around
Mm-hmm.
leadership or other things, it takes me back to work mode. So it pulls me away from that. And you'll love this piece. I read and see how these authors create mental pictures. And it actually helps me when I get back to work the next time because I begin to think more creatively in those mental pictures. And so for me, that's a great way that I can unplug on that individual level. Um, and you even learn, I travel a lot and do a lot of conferences and I do speaking and we exhibit at conferences and we have a great sales guy in our team who's this total extrovert. I'm the total introvert. And so we'll spend an entire day at the booth and you're talking to people and I love that aspect of the business and I love meeting people. When we're done with the day, I'm like, I want to go to my room, read,
Yes.
do whatever, sit, watch a game, things like that. My sales guy, Brian, that total extrovert, he goes to the hotel bar and talks to more people. So the point is you have to know you and you have to know what's going to help you get there. And when
Yes.
you find that place of refreshment, it makes all the difference in the world. And the one challenge I would give to your listeners, Catherine, is this. Most adults today don't give themselves permission to unplug and refresh
100%.
because there's always
Yes.
something else to do, right? There's something at the house, there's something
Right.
with the kids, there's something with my spouse, all these things. Yes, you still need to give yourself permission.
100%. And it is about having that gas tank being filled back up again because we will run and run and run until we are completely out of gas. And then people are still saying, you gotta, or maybe we tell ourselves, I got to keep producing. I got to keep doing more. And rather than just, like you said, taking the 90 minutes on the porch or going back to the room and things like that. And that's what I've kind of learned about myself too. So we could totally hang out if we were at an event because we would like network like crazy for about 8 hours and be like, all right, I'm
See
not
you
going to see
tomorrow.
you. I don't want to see you again.
Exactly.
I'm going back to my room and
Exactly.
I'm just getting in my pajamas and I am done. And it's so funny too because my husband's the complete opposite. So after a day like that, he'd be like, "Let's go out and go dancing," and I'm like, no, we're
No.
we're done." Um, but yes, I love that you are basically putting a fine point on that time that you have to take for yourself and really understanding how you function too because we're talking about the people that want to go check into the hotel but there are people that want to keep going and if that's your thing that if that gives you energy then yes 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 go do that because we kind of need people to do that too and we're
Yeah.
all contributing something and if you're giving 100% throughout the day, then that's your contribution. And now it's like, okay, I have to go refuel. And then I'm going to go out and give 100% again versus, I'm going to keep just running on empty and hope for the best here because then you get sick and then get all sorts of ailments and things like that. And you're not giving yourself the respect that you might be giving somebody else, which I think is so, so key.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we coach around this all the time. I mean, you would think executive coaching is all about leadership and stuff. We talk about refreshing and what they need to do for themselves and to build themselves up. And, the illustration I give oftentimes is if you don't take that break, you're going to keep running at 50%. Do you want to be 50%
Yep.
effective? And they're like, no, I can't be 50% effective. Well, if you don't give yourself the break to get back up to 90%, 95%, you're always going to be there. And that's part of that permission piece again, right? Because we think about
Yes.
execution and we think about accomplishment or doing. And so my phrase is this: sometimes it's not about doing, sometimes it's about being present, being quiet, being filled, so that when I get back to doing, I'm more effective.
Right. I love also telling I get a little passive aggressive with people just by saying, you're not showing up for your team because sometimes people think like I have to do this for my team, I have to do this for my team. But if you're exhausted and they know that, they're not gonna think that highly of you. And it's like this person is not taking care of themselves. So why are we all struggling
Yeah.
too as a result?
Yeah. And they're watching. And so if you're nonstop and you're doing emails at 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. and things like
Oh,
that, you
yes.
can tell them, hey, you don't have to do this. They won't believe it
Right.
because they believe your actions, not
Right.
your words. And so the best thing you can do, even
100%.
if you want to do emails at 2 a.m., go at it. Schedule them to be delivered at 8 a.m., right? Set the pace for your team to
Exactly.
realize they need to be whole in everything.
Exactly. Well, Sean, this has been completely delightful. And I think you have given the listeners a lot of things to think about. I'm going to mention too, because I also believe this, reading novels I think is super important because if you're reading self-help books or books about business, you're not taking the time off. And a
Yeah.
whole world could be opened up to you with just a great piece of fiction. So, and it helps you in the long run. So definitely shout out for that because I'm also a reader as well. But all your insight has been absolutely fantastic. And I appreciate you being here and to sharing a little bit of your wisdom. And I will have all your information in the notes to this podcast that if people want to get a hold of
Awesome.
you to learn more about what you're doing or perhaps seek your help, they can get a hold of you. So this has been
That'd be
wonderful.
great.
Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate it, Catherine. Good to meet you. Spend some time and look forward to doing it again sometime.